Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Christensen. This is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, celebrating classic horror throughout history with new episodes every Friday night. Tonight we're talking about 1986's The Fly, the rare remake that surpasses its original for sheer horror and drama. After years of building a reputation as a fiercely intelligent filmmaker who combined gooey special effects, challenging technical concepts, and emotional narrative heft, Canadian David Cronenberg finally hit the jackpot in this updating and reimagining of the 1958 classic. Rather than the simple swapping of heads and hands, brainy inventor Seth Brundle, played to perfection by Jeff Goldblum, sees his transporter pods inadvertently become gene splicers when a wayward fly enters the equation. Watching the slow and horrifying evolution as the insect's characteristics make themselves known is where Cronenberg's customary gross-outs excel, courtesy of Chris Walas's Oscar-winning effects. But it is Goldblum's brilliant, multi-layered characterization, often beneath pounds of makeup, of a man at war with his own body that sticks in the memory and gives the film its heart. Geena Davis gives an equally strong performance as a reporter who is first attracted to the project as a story idea, but ends up falling in love with the doomed scientist, while John Getz turns in a terrific, sleazy portrait as Davis's boss and ex-lover. Howard Shore's musical score is one of his best, and he is joined by numerous other longtime Cronenberg collaborators such as editor Ronald Sanders, cinematographer Mark Irwin, costume designer Denise Cronenberg, and production designer Carol Spear. A thoughtful and thrilling meditation on disease, aging, addiction, and much more, this expert combination of sci-fi, horror, and love story remains, along with The Dead Zone, one of Cronenberg's most accessible films. The sensitive and emotional script was almost entirely rewritten by the director from Charles Edward Pogue's original screenplay, though both writers share equal credit for bringing the renewed story to light. Produced by Stuart Kornfeld and Mel Brooks, yes, he of Young Frankenstein and Blazing Saddles fame, this is easily one of the greatest genre offerings of the 1980s and arguably the finest horror remake ever made. Be afraid, be very afraid, but also be super excited because it's the 40th anniversary of The Fly, as directed by David Cronenberg. And we have an incredible panel to chat about it with me. Let's bring everybody in. And let's say hello to John Kitley of Kitley's Crypt.
Good morning, everybody.
Dan Caffrey of the Losers Club.
Bzz. Just trying to make fly sound effects.
Chris Scales beaming in from the Rocky Mountain State.
What's up, y'all?
From south of the border and first time in the doc's office, J. Luis Rivera.
Hello, friends.
And giving us the buzz from St. Louis, Eli LaChance.
Hi, this is me. Hello.
And we're going to be chatting about The Fly from 1986, celebrating its 40th anniversary. And we'll also be talking about The Fly 2, the sequel from 1989. And we will be talking spoilers, so just prepare yourselves, everybody. Thanks for coming on the show and welcome. How has it been 40 years since this movie came out? I remember sitting in the theater in the summer of 1986, and my little brother was with me. And when the baboon scene happened, he turned to me and said, "I don't think I should be here." My little brother was 9 at the time, and so I had to shuttle him off to another movie theater, and because I'm an awesome brother. And then I went back and watched the rest of the movie, and we found each other. Everything's fine. It's all worked out just like it should. John, I'm curious to hear what your first exposure to David Cronenberg's The Fly was.
I saw it opening night when it came out. I was extremely excited about this from reading about it in Fango and all the other publications at the time. Being not only a David Cronenberg fan and a Jeff Goldblum fan and Chris Walas, who did the effects, I was extremely excited, was not disappointed, and this remains in my top 10. I absolutely love this film, and I would say it's, if it is not damn near perfect, I would say it's a perfect film.
There you go. Dan, you got kind of like front-loaded into our 1958 Fly panel because of your love for this movie. We went, wait, what do you mean you've never seen the original? So welcome back to Flyland. What was your exposure to David Cronenberg's The Fly?
It's funny because I feel like I was a little bit of a latecomer to this one too, in addition to the old one. It's funny. I grew up mostly in Florida, and I would always go to the Universal Monster Effects show. I don't know if y'all have gone to that and seen some nods. And it stinks. It just changed recently, so I don't think it has this anymore. But the cornerstone of that show is the two, teleporters. I don't know if that's the official name for them, but on the side of it, right? And I'd seen them before in the VHS box of The Fly, but I'd never actually seen the movie. And in the old version of that show, the big finale is you see the Brundle fly in its final form come out, and they go into the effects and everything too, just the behind the scenes element of the show. So once I saw that, I think I was like 11 or so when I first saw that, and then I don't think I actually got to seeing The Fly until I was about 14. But sometimes when you see a horror movie, or maybe the VHS box first, and the VHS box is like way cooler than what you actually see. I feel like The Fly was the one that just lived up to that, right? Like it really lived up to what I saw from the effects extravaganza. And I totally agree with John. I think it's a perfect movie, and it's maybe at least as far as this horror goes, maybe Cronenberg's most accessible, maybe his biggest gateway, except for maybe The Dead Zone. But it feels like much more of a horror movie than The Dead Zone does.
Yeah, it was certainly, and I think this still holds true, the most successful Cronenberg film to date. I think it's been seen by people who have seen a Cronenberg film. This is probably the Cronenberg film they've seen. Chris, how about you? What's your origin story on this one?
Well, like most of my horror movies I watched back in the 80s, I had to wait. I was so young that I had to wait for its network television premiere. For this panel, I went and sought out the VHS that we used to record the movie the first time it broadcast back in 1988. Needless to say, I know I was like 7, 8 years old. And even back then, I was both horrified yet mesmerized. Like I cried at the end of the movie, and my parents were just weirded out by that. But they kind of knew what kind of kid I was going to be from that point on. So to follow what John said and what Dan said, there are very few movies, especially horror movies, that I consider to be perfect. I would narrow that list to maybe probably Aliens, and The Fly. And every time I rate it, it's a 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5. I never thought there would be such a great mix of horror and drama that would actually get, all ages they can understand and they can relate with.
I have actually never seen the television version of it, so I'm curious now to be like, what survived the cut? Buzzing over to you, Jay Louise. Jay Louise had the distinct honor of writing the essay for both The Fly 1958 and Cronenberg's The Fly for our book Horror 101. And I was so excited to have you on the panel today. So thank you very much for joining us. I've been meaning to have you on the show for quite a long time. So love to hear your introduction to The Fly.
Well, it was similar to Chris because I was very young when it came out. So I watched it for the first time when I was like 7 or 8 years. My aunt rented it from a small video store. And so my introduction was in a VHS. My auntie was a big fan of Jeff Goldblum, and she wasn't expecting what it but I love the film. I guess it's my most favorite film of all time. It's the film that made me want to make films. It's perfect, yes. And that was my introduction to horror, to Cronenberg, and to skin diseases.
Over to you, Eli.
I was definitely a child. It would have either been a rented VHS or a television version during some October in the 90s. For decades, my memory of this, 3 things of this movie stuck out to me in my memory. Jeff Goldblum breaking the guy's arm, throwing up on the snack cakes, and the monster. And that's all that the movie was in my mind for a very long time until I revisited it as an adult.
Let me just stay with you, Eli. So as an adult, what resonates for you differently?
Everything. Like when you're a kid watching it, it's just great goopy monsters. But as an adult, this is a thematically densely packed movie, as I think everyone here will probably attest to, and everyone here will probably bring something different in terms of thematic concerns. Because while it's sort of an old trope, I mean, going back to just like the Metamorphosis, Kafka, right? Like it's something very unique. It deals with I think I read Cronenberg's intro to a copy of the Metamorphosis that I have on my bookshelf in here. Last time we were going to talk about The Fly, and I was like, oh, we're not going to do this movie. So I did extra homework and didn't get to talk about that. And now I barely remember it. But he talked about the movie. I was surprised to see he talked about it as being about a metaphor for aging. And I absolutely think that hits all of its beats. It's a very sweet movie. Like, for that first act, it almost is a love story completely. Like, before we get in the pod, like there's a charismatic love story happening, and then it all goes south, as it will when science is involved.
And the thing we haven't mentioned is that it is in fact a remake. And this was in the 80s, and I don't think we were as leery of remakes then as we are perhaps now. When films were remade, usually it seemed like it was with a good reason, and somebody had a different vision they wanted to bring forth. Things like Invasion of the Body Snatchers 78, things like John Carpenter's The Thing. And so when I heard The Fly was being remade, I said, okay, that would be interesting. And the fact that Cronenberg was coming at it from a completely different standpoint, as you said, Eli, it's about metamorphosis. It's not like the 1958 film where it's presto changeo, we have an arm and a head of a fly on a human being and vice versa. Here we get to watch a human slowly devolve or evolve, depending on how you look at it, into something that has never existed before. Several of you have pointed out the performances. I mean, I think Jeff Goldblum is masterful in this. And I know when the 86 Oscar nominations were announced, I was like, well, there's one person missing here, and it's Jeff Goldblum. Let's go ahead and start off with talking about David Cronenberg and perhaps why he was the right person for the job.
I mean, the very obvious element is body horror, right? I mean, I know that's the cliche answer, but I do think that's true. And I guess we should say too, within body horror becomes an internal psychological kind of horror / evolution, right? Like, I think we think of body horror and it's like, oh, my video drone, a thing is opening up and a tape is coming out, or Rabid, there's like a gross mouth under an armpit, right? And yeah, that's part of it. And obviously it's part of it with The Fly here, but it's also about seeing his inner turmoil and trying to maintain a sense of decency, even as his body is getting out of control, right? And that's something you could even trace to The Dead Zone, some of his less gnarlier movies, I think. I'm just looking at his, and I guess because he's done some effects work in his films so far. Yeah, Video Drone Scanners, The Brood.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, this is the most FX heavy, right? So far. Like, I feel like he knows when to hold them and when to fold them when it comes to reveals, right? Like it, and in this film especially, I don't know what in his background or his artistic practice that you could trace this. I think when you think he's gone as far as he's going to go, he still keeps pushing it. Like, he knows just to like keep glaring. I'm sure there's something psychologically in him or academically we could trace that back to, but when I think of his strengths, that's what is for me, the sense of escalation and restraint and reveal.
When he was going to do it, he had said he didn't want to make a guy with a big fly head, that he was going to do it at a genetic level. And to me, it's almost like with Carpenter's version of The Thing and the original, we're going in a completely different direction than what we knew. So yes, it is a remake. It is the same kind of story, but he's completely redoing it. And while the original does have that love connection in there, which has got a really tragic element, I think the beauty of what he did here is this could be about aging. It could be about cancer. It could be about any sort of disease, and having a loved one watch you go through it and someone that, extremely a love affair, and to have to watch them go through that is so tragic. And even at the very, very end, when it's Brundle Fly telepod, Geena Davis's character Veronica is still heartbroken.
Yep.
And I think that's what he brings even more elevated than in the original, is that we're watching him go through this. And at times he thought he was turned into something great. And then he also starts to realize that he's losing himself. And that's even more tragic. So I told my wife after I'd seen it, we need to go see it, or my future wife, because it's a love story. It hit as same to her as it did for me, but that's another story. But I do think Cronenberg just brought a masterful tale, threw in all the goo and gore, but still kept the humanity in there.
Even if now it's more on a psychological level, there's always some degenerative change, like in Spider or even in A History of Violence. There's something that a character degenerates into something. And I think that's something that he keeps doing in a different way. The Dead Zone is probably a similar filmed in a more psychological level. But The Fly was like, it has a lot of heart.
My introduction to Cronenberg was TV edits of Videodrome and scanners, which just made me want to go see what I was missing. And when I did find out those things, I had already seen the movie first, and I was way too young to start piecing together what David Cronenberg was actually going to bring to the film. But as I got older, it was kind of like what Luis said and what John hinted to, how it's just a metaphor for so many things, especially in life. And they're all relatable life circumstances that we've either witnessed ourselves or we've been close to others who have gone through the same things. And I think David Cronenberg, for however he looks, because I know there was, I forgot which movie that said that he looks like, I think it was Nightbreed, where Clive Barker says he looks like a stone cold serial killer. And just seeing, but the fact that he brings in, like Louis said, it was just so much heart, and it's just so meaningful for what he did. There's not a part of the film where he doesn't make you care about what's going on, whether it's Jeff Goldblum, whether it was Geena Davis going through the article that's coming out, all that stuff. So I just think David Cronenberg, especially as I got older, was just, there really couldn't have been a better choice for that film.
I was going to ask if anyone, because my introduction to him was as an actor in Nightbreed. My dad showed me Nightbreed when I was like 6. And he's like, oh yeah, he's a horror director. And I remember the VHS had this intro by Clive Barker. And he's like, and you'll see in the movie, the director, David Cronenberg. So it was a funny introduction because I love him in that movie. But watching his films after seeing his performance as Decker makes a lot of sense too.
Before I put my foot in my mouth, he did write this, right?
Yes, he adapted the screen. Yeah. He adapted the screenplay that Charles Edward Pogue had written.
What I was thinking about this time while I watched it, I was thinking about a lot of things. But one of the things I was thinking about was if this movie was made today, how much different it would be. This isn't a didactic movie at all. It doesn't come and like give you the message in all bold, which is why there's obvious thematic concerns, but it's almost a little inscrutable. And there's this concept that I keep thinking about and I keep talking about it. So I don't know, maybe I'm talking out of my ass because it's something I'm newly introduced to. But in writing, there's this idea that you don't want to be smarter than your story. The idea if you have a big message you want to tell, if you put the story on rails to serve that message, it ends up feeling untrue. And so as an artist, you go in and you try to really focus on those true moments and let the story kind of guide you instead of the other way around. And then you get something that's almost universal. And I think in terms of The Fly, it's very much that. Like we were talking about the metaphors of aging and disease. I think in the 80s, a lot of people thought this was a metaphor for the HIV epidemic. There are themes about women's bodily autonomy that are unfortunately still controversial, that hit maybe even harder today, that I think under another director or another artist would either not be there or would be so in your face that it would feel almost corny, like an after school special instead of this really moving work of art. So I think that's what Cronenberg has sort of brought to this version of The Fly that really I think makes it sing.
Well, what's funny is you go back to Cronenberg's origins as a director, with Shivers, with Rabid, with The Brood, and you're watching him continue to kind of like escalate as a horror director, as a body horror director, somebody who is interested in putting the gooey stuff in front of you. And we get to Videodrome, and the same year we have Videodrome, we have The Dead Zone, 1983. And I think of those two films, like the humanity of The Dead Zone and the outrageous kind of goofy, gory, message-laden Videodrome, you put those two together and it's like, yes, of course, David Cronenberg should be directing this version of The Fly. I mentioned Charles Edward Pogue had written the screenplay as an adaptation, as an updating, as a remake of The Fly. And it followed kind of a male-female. They were husband and wife, similar to the original 58. What was original about their story was that it was a metamorphosis. Cronenberg has said that he basically rewrote everything that Charles Edward Pogue had put down, but kept the spirit of that metamorphosis. And it was Cronenberg who fought for Charles Edward Pogue to still retain a credit, even though Cronenberg had completely rewritten the story. And his feeling was that he could not have written his version of this if he had not read Charles Edward Pogue's screenplay in the first place. So a very generous gesture on his part. Charles Edward Pogue would go on and have another movie, Psycho 3, that came out the same year. And I was like, okay, that's Charles Edward Pogue and that's David Cronenberg. They become very clear when you look at those two movies. There was also something that jumped out at me. We were talking about some of the metaphors. This time, the addiction angle really jumped out at me. There are so many times where Jeff Goldblum is not only chasing that same rush that he had from the first transformation, the first teleportation, but he's also trying to draw in other people. He wants a partner. He does not want to drink alone. And so that notion of addiction was just, I've always seen the aging and the disease metaphors. I hadn't seen the addiction one quite as clear this time around. And again, that's where I go, Cronenberg is so smart. People kind of write him off as being cold and clinical, which he can be, but also I think he's just got a really big heart as well. And this is the one that really shines for us. But we would not have that heart if not for the performances. Jeff Goldblum, Geena Davis, and John Getz as Stathis Barnes. Let's go ahead and talk about Jeff Goldblum to start. Jay Luis, you said that your aunt had a thing for Mr. Goldblum, and that was what led her to this movie. He's rather charming for the first, 20 minutes or so, and then things start to change.
If I remember correctly, he was kind of a heartthrob, right? He was kind of popular, right? I mean, at least in Mexico, he was a bit.
Yeah, he was a working actor, but he was never a star.
Right. This was the one that kind of made him a star. Like he'd been, appearing in large prestige pictures like Silverado, The Big Chill. But this is the one that where he was the lead. And I don't think he's ever not been a star since.
There's something about the male actors in Cronenberg movies that I don't know how he does it, but he seems to bring the best out of them. Jeremy Irons and James Woods.
Yep.
I think that they gave their best in Cronenberg films. You could say the same about Viggo Mortensen. And that's something that the sequel lacks, a strong lead performance like the one that Goldblum gives.
Let's go over to you, Chris. What are your thoughts about Goldblum as Seth Brundle?
Just so natural, so charismatic. I don't know. He reminded me a lot of how I was as a teen. It was awkward, but it was confidently awkward, if that makes any sense. Just he knows what he wants, he knows who he is, he's proud of who he is, and he's so confident in what he can do and how brilliant he is that he just goes right up to Geena Davis, who's actively trying to get away from him, and it's just no, you don't need to talk to anybody else, you need to talk to me. And he just carries that swagger throughout, but at the same time, like you said, he's charming, he's sweet, he's you feel for the guy and you want them, you like their relationship that they get into. Seeing it, I first saw Jeff Goldblum, it was like Earth Girls Are Easy, Transylvania 6-5000, Death Wish, the 78 Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So yeah, this was definitely his star-making performance. And I don't think anybody who's seen this film would say that he's done anything better since then. This should have been nominated for an Oscar. This is Toni Collette and Hereditary levels of how dare you leave them out of the Oscars.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone said. And also, no knock to Jeff Goldblum's post-Jurassic Park career, but I kind of miss when he played a little bit of a normal guy. I know he's always had this slightly jittery element to him and everything, but much like Christopher Walken from The Dead Zone, I feel like there was this turn in both of their careers where they went viral or became a meme and they really started playing into that. Of course, Jeff Goldblum, he is a little bit like this and talks like that and everything. But I remember I was reviewing at South by Southwest as a critic, and I was reviewing that movie, Isle of Dogs, the Wes Anderson film, and him and the whole cast came in, and he seems really nice or whatever, but he's waving at the camera with just his pinky and just totally playing up the whole Jeff Goldblumness of it all, which once again works for whatever role he's in now. But I'm much more emotionally connected to him when I see him falling in love and just trying to be a good person and fighting back against this evil force. And so it's weird. I feel like when I watched this and even The Big Chill, and I think the first thing I ever saw him in as a kid was probably this TV version of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
Yes, yes.
Ichabod Crane. And even in that, like Jeff Goldblum was still age appropriate to play Ichabod Crane now, he would be Jeff Goldbluming it up. But I like that version of him is just like a slightly dorky guy who we could all see ourselves knowing in real life. So I feel like I just relate to him and emotionally connect to him in this film in a way that I don't always. I feel like I'm usually just laughing at whatever he's doing these days.
Yeah, I think the Christopher Walken comparison is a really good one. We enjoy the tics and the mannerisms that have become the cliche, but I agree. Like, we're actually getting a performance here, Jay Luis. I think you nailed it. Cronenberg's things that he brings out of James Woods, the things that he brings out of Peter Weller, like we see really great performances at the hands of this so-called cold and clinical director.
Oh, I'm a big Jeff Goldblum fan. I think the first two things I saw him in were, I think things every 90s kid saw him in, which was Jurassic Park 2, and Independence Day. So I was familiar with him from that before I saw The Fly. And then I was like, oh, you get to see one of your heroes turn to goop. Cool. I don't think I can add a whole lot in regards to like who Jeff Goldblum is. I think Dan really nailed that in real life metamorphosis that we've all witnessed over the last few decades. But his performance in this movie, there are some subtle things that I think are really cool. Like I was noticing this time when I watched the first time that he kisses Geena Davis after he's gone through the teleporter, he's very weirdly like observant in a way that is not sexual. It's almost mathematical. He's like looking like it's so subtle, like I couldn't even mimic it, but it's weird and it made me so uncomfortable this time. And that's a choice as a performer. That's a choice. That's what he brought to the table. So I think that moment's really cool. So I'll leave it at that.
I've always been a fan of his. I mean, even though he was in a bunch of horror movies in the late 70s and stuff, there was a TV show called 10 Speed and Brown Shoes, which he was an amateur detective that I loved. And he just seemed this weird guy that was smarter than he lets on, which is perfect for this role. And when he was cast, I was excited because I like him, but I think he's the perfect character for this. And yes, I was extremely pissed off that he was not even given a nomination, because his performance in here, even when he is entirely encased in latex and rubber and makeup, he is still giving a performance. Even if it's just his eyes, carries so much weight and emotion that it brings that incredible script that has these little throwaway lines to other people where he just makes it hit home even harder. The whole talk about the body or the fly politics, or even when they're doing the classic "help me" line in a different aspect, but it's so tragic. And I don't know if you could have gotten that from anybody else as good as what Goldblum did.
We've talked a lot about like the sensitivity and he brings this massive blend. I mean, it's such a showcase role for him. We have him being sensitive. We have him being awkward. We have him being confident. We have him being sexy. We have him being dangerous. We have him being animalistic. He has all of these things. And as you said, John, like so much of that as the film goes on is being covered up more and more and more. And another actor might have said, you know what, let's lean into the makeup, let the makeup do the work. You can see him performing through it. The levels of his duality, of him fighting what's going on within him and then embracing it. I love his little children's TV show that he does about how Brundlefly eats. Like, it's so funny and yet so dark. And that's the kind of gallows humor that we see in people who are terminal patients, who are like, you know what, I'm going out, but I'm going to go out in style. And then there's also just these great effects of like him climbing up the wall, punching the wall and shattering the wooden pillar. I mean, there's just so many great things that Seth Brundle is a character that I think as soon as this movie came out was immortalized in the halls of horror.
There's something I found when I was watching it for the show, how Jeff how he performs intelligence. And I know that's something that comes from the screenplay, but he manages to be credible in that smart, in that intelligence. I mean, I can't believe he's a scientist. There's nothing like there's a speech he gives when the monkey dies, and she tapes him to talk about it, and he doesn't want to talk about it. There's a frustration, but a scientific mind working, and I mean, it's very interesting, and I can see why he was chosen afterwards as a scientist in so many films later.
Yeah, I think also what's interesting is that he doesn't look like the traditional scientist, right? He doesn't have the glasses. He doesn't have the crew cut. He doesn't, I mean, he has the long hair. He has no glasses. Yet, as you said, Luis, he conveys intelligence in a genuine way. You know, he managed the techno speak extremely well, but he also really just comes from speaking from the heart as well. Eli.
He totally looks like a scientist. I just wanted to speak up on behalf as a scientist for the scientists that we don't all have crew cuts, but most of us have glasses. That's true.
And Eli, I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I think that's the thing. Like, we have our cinematic version of what we think a scientist looks like. And he is perfectly matched by Geena Davis as Veronica, who was definitely an up-and-comer. This is a great showcase for her as well. She would win the Oscar for supporting actress 2 years later for Accidental Tourist, but this is the one that kind of launched her career as well. Thoughts about Geena Davis as Veronica?
Gosh, I had a super mega crush on Geena Davis growing up. Like I mentioned before, I had seen her in Transylvania 65000, Earth Girls Are Easy. I know that there is this thing in Hollywood. Directors tend to not really want to cast real life couples together.
Right.
And but I think the fact that Jeff Goldblum and Geena Davis were dating and would get married like a year after this film, like, you can really tell, like, they're so comfortable with each other.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you could have gotten two people off the street and said, okay, I want you to have this type of chemistry together in about, give or take, 20 or 30 minutes to make this romance really believable. I think it only could have worked with that type of pairing. And Geena Davis, I've met her at a convention last year, and
Wow.
one of the things that she was talking about is just how relaxed she was, and it comes across in her performance. Like, she didn't seem like, at least during the romance part, she didn't seem like she was acting all that much. This is like kind of what their day-to-day life is probably like, and they just added the dialogue from the script in it. But as it goes darker into the film, she becomes our eyes to what, like I mentioned earlier, what we've all seen. Like, we've seen our loved ones get sick. We've seen our loved ones, a lot of us seen our loved ones go through addictions, things that we know that are actively hurting them, and we just want to help because we love this person so much and we care about them. And just to see her reactions, I think it was the ear scene, the scene where he pulls his ear off, that was not told to Geena Davis beforehand. And what you see on the screen is her real life reaction. During the same interview that she gave during the convention, she was just like, there are so many times that I had to step off set and I was really about to retch because I had not seen any of the makeup effects or anything. And all that just comes across. She is as good as Jeff Goldblum, maybe not as eccentric because her character didn't need to be, but she's the perfect pairing for Jeff Goldblum on this film.
It's amazing that the second half of the film, or once the changes start, as an actress, she's on 11 pretty much the rest of the film. So as an actress going into work, okay, you're here, you're all excited and upset. Okay, tomorrow you're back here again. So that had to have been extremely difficult. The fact, whether it helped or made it harder for her personally, the fact that she's watching her boyfriend, future husband at the time, and is reacting towards him dying or going through this change, just adds to the level. And that has nothing to do whether you knew that or not. It had to have helped her performance, because you feel that loss and you feel that heartbreak watching her watch him deteriorate and also start to change into something that is not him. And I think the dynamic between the two of those, again, is heartbreaking, but you see Goldblum's humanity slowly start to dissolve. And I mean, there's some, it really goes back to Cronenberg's dialogue, because there's some lines in there that are, some might say throwaway, but are so impactful. And the way those two act again with them is just stellar.
Yeah, he is truly not the man she fell in love with.
No.
I love Geena Davis. I think she did an excellent performance in this film. I think she showcased there's an incredible range that this character demands, and we could easily imagine a version of this where it hits a certain tipping point and it's all hysterics. But a lot of this movie, she plays quiet, and I think that's especially early on. So like by the time we get to the end, where I think some hysterics are warranted, like. It's still not, at 10, but she sells it. It's a believable performance. I think the way she plays the angry lover is really excellent. I think that's one of the more understated moments in the movie, and is 100% sold by her performance. When she walks in and he's with that chick he found at the bar, it's fantastic.
How she reacts to the insect politics speech, that's when she realizes that he's gonna hurt her, and that he's sure that he's gonna hurt her, and that's her loved one. I think that moment still strikes me as an amazing performance, because she's gradually going from fearing for him to fearing him.
Yes,
it's an amazing ride. That scene, it sums to the tragedy. The original, the wife of the scientist is the lead character. I think I remember, but she's not in the backseat. She has the same journey as Jeff's character.
It's funny because I totally get the themes of addiction or aging or whatever it is, but I do think on a broader level, right? Like this something we can all relate to, whether we've seen a loved one die or not. I do think there comes a point in any relationship where, at the best, you just discover things about your partner that you didn't know before, or you maybe just realize they're a more complex person than you did before. I mean, I think that happens in even the best relationships. And then at worst, right? Like, oh, they're not who I thought they were. They're, engaging in something really toxic. And so obviously this is a very exaggerated scenario, like seeing your lover turn to a disgusting fly monster, right? But once again, that's all coming from what his character is going through emotionally. So I feel like she really is the driver of that, and making the film. You all said before, like, okay, this is the Cronenberg film that you should introduce people to. And it's funny to say that given how disgusting and violent it is, but I think it's because of that, her being that audience surrogate in the eyes. And the favorite moment for me, I mean, it's the assisted suicide at the end. Like, it's heartbreaking. It's just her reaction to it. And then the movie just ends right there. I love that we don't get like a ton of, right? Because the butterfly baby thing, that's the alternate.
That's deleted.
Yeah. I like that just cuts off right there. Like, just, okay, how's she going to deal with this from here on out? Which, the sequel ruins that a little bit. But that's my favorite moment. I mean, that's like the moment from the movie for me. It's got the effects. It's got the human connection, despite her. I think it's an animatronic at that point. And it's got a great performance from her.
And something I want to mention is that Cronenberg has often said that he approaches these stories of transformation, of metamorphosis, non-judgmentally. If there is a disease, the disease just wants to live as well, just as much as the humans do. This Brundle fly wants to come through. It wants to be born. It wants to be seen. It wants to take up space in this world. And we, I think, as humans, we stand in judgment of it. But Brundlefly is just doing what Brundlefly does. And I think there's a real kind of magic to that, because that's something we see Cronenberg visit over and over again in his films, is this idea of, yeah, I'm changing, and maybe that's not a bad thing. Brundle definitely has that moment of thinking that it's a good thing until he starts to mourn for the loss of what he was.
Do we think that, I mean, I know obviously he has like the door fused to him at the end, but say he wasn't injured, do we think that he would eventually just become this giant fly that's fully functional, can fly around? Probably not, I guess, because it's like fusing two things. But I always wonder that, like, if the change had kept going, would he just be literally a giant fly? In a couple.
Well, I think he even asks that, right? Him like turning into a giant 6-foot fly, and the answer is no. He's becoming something that has never existed before. He's becoming Brundlefly.
Yeah.
Talking about women's bodily autonomy, and I wanted to mention the scene about when you get the abortion, how she brought out that scene and just really, like, I don't know what level or what depths you have to go to mentally to pull that kind of performance out when you're trying to think, okay, this is the man I love's baby. It also brings up that question of, hey, do we know this child might be, deformed? It might be normal. This could pass it up. What decision do you make? And she just runs the emotional ladders. I don't know. I just wanted to bring that scene up about just how strong that scene was.
That sequence there when he kidnaps her from the hospital is a perfect example of both of their performances. She is hysterical, and he is begging her to let him live, his little Brundle live, because it might be human. And she can't for obvious reasons. And when she says, definitely, I can't do this, with just seeing his eyes, he says, oh, that's too bad. And then it's like, that's the end of Brundle. And now we have the Brundle Fly character, and he completely changes. But it's, again, what Veronica's being able to do is just raw emotion. And all we get from Seth is from his eyes, from Jeff Goldblum, is his eyes. And that little monotone voice where he just, oh, that's too bad. And that it's just incredible. Love that sequence.
This is a great time to actually just start tossing out our favorite moments, because I think this is a movie of many, many moments, whether it's a line or a scene or an effect.
Favorite moments. I mean, obviously, I love when he throws up on the snack cakes. I think it's just such a repulsive.
Stole mine too.
It's like such a debasing, like the debasement of Seth Brundle is at its max. I mean, all of the gross thing that happens, his ear falling off, none of that's as like revolting as he's like begging for help, and he's just like, and you see that he has that recognition where like the human is still there, and he's like, oh yeah, this is gross. Like, I think, and there's something relatable about it too. Like that moment, like I think we've all been in that situation where like, hey, I'm the weirdo, but I didn't realize I was being weird, and oh shit, I shouldn't be throwing up on my food in mixed company. That's probably not cool. So that I think is like one of my favorite moments of the movie. It's really memorable. On the topic of how thematically dense this is and letting the story guide the writer, I think it's really interesting the way the computer is handled in this movie, given the current moment we're living through. Everyone's got like opinions about AI and everything like that, and it almost feels like a lot of those problems are anticipated, but once again, obviously they probably weren't. It was just he was letting the story guide him to the most true moment. But I just thought that was interesting. I don't really have a lot more to add to it than that, because obviously Cronenberg wasn't thinking about modern AI in 1986. But yeah.
Yeah, there is a chat GPT feel to him asking the questions, and you see the computer like going, well, here's the answer.
Well, my favorite moment, even as a kid, the moment that shocked me everything was the nightmare sequence, the wall with the worm baby. That destroyed my mind as a kid. And it's my favorite sequence. And later, many years later, I discovered Cronenberg himself was acting in that as the doctor.
He plays the doctor. Yeah.
It's an amazing horror sequence, because it's like a small horror movie inside a horror movie.
Solely because I didn't get to see it until I was much later, because I was, like I said, forced to watch TV network edits. It has to be when John Getz gets his hand and leg vomited on, because, like I said, I didn't get to see that until years later. I was like, wait, this is what they were hiding? And I was flipping out when I first saw it unedited, and I was awed at the effects and everything with that scene, and especially the puppet work of Chris Wallace during that scene, because you look at it, you almost can't even tell that it's a puppet on the close-up where you see him throwing up on it, and I was just like, this is masterful.
Yeah, Chris Walas won the Oscar along with Stephen Dupuis. And I just want to throw out a quick shout out to Stephen Dupuis because when you look on IMDb, under makeup, he's not even listed for this film. Even though he shared the Oscar with Chris Walas, you have to go to additional crew, and that's where you find Stephen Dupuis. It's a shame that he is not spoken of with more reverence, because if you look at his filmography, he has been on so many amazing films in very prominent roles, including the sequel, which we'll be talking about in just a little bit.
I don't know if it's my favorite, but I just want to make sure it gets talked about. I love the arm wrestling compound fracture scene. It almost feels like Cronenberg's take on 80s machismo. I don't think Over the Top was out yet. It's like a year later, maybe. But just this idea of this like idiotic bar scene that's so common in like every 80s movie, like every 80s action / comedy. And then we're going to Cronenberg it up, right? I love that. But man, my favorite scene that I got to echo Eli. It's the spitting up on the food and the rice cakes. I think because it's just gross to look at, right? I feel like right during 2020, that was the meme. It's like, oh, me going into 2020, it was like just regular Jeff Goldblum in The Fly. That was like me coming out of 2020. There's a reason for that, right? Like it's just gross and disgusting. I love the embarrassment thing that Eli talked about. It's like someone catching you picking your nose or something. But there's also I don't know if flies do this. I'm assuming they do. It's like but I'm assuming it is magnifying the biology of a real life fly, right? Like, do flies slobber on shit to like break it down? And which we don't think much about. Just talking about a fly, be like, oh yeah, that's really gross when you think about it, and it's just magnified all of a sudden. There's so much going on in that scene. So I know it's not like necessarily the most horrific one, but man, that's when someone says The Fly, that's the image that comes up for me.
Off the top of my head, well, again, like I mentioned, the little lines of dialogue just kill me. When he kind of whispers, "There was an old lady who swallowed a fly." Just again, these little throwaway lines, but you're like, oh, okay, that's pretty slick. Like a lot of you guys saw it as a kid and loved it, and probably half of the stuff in there went right over our heads because it's not. There's stuff in there that's not for kids, and you watch it as an adult, and you're like, oh my god, there's a whole nother layer. But one of my favorites is when he gets to the point in the bathroom where he realizes something's wrong, and the whole bit with the finger. Now, as gross as the throwing up is, when he starts squeezing his finger and that pus or whatever squirts out, that always just, both on a technical level for special effects, but also that puzzled look on his face, like, what the hell? And then there's that great part where he's staring into the mirror and the music is kicking in, and you literally see him realize that, no, I'm not a Superman anymore. There's something seriously fucked up going on. And again, Goldblum pulls that off. He doesn't go, over the top. Is just that look of horror on his face. We forgot to mention that one of the executive producers was Mel Brooks. I love the fact that he loves this kind of cinema and was footing the bill on that. I thought that was great.
Working with the two weird Davids, like around that time, right? Yeah.
I would say that some of my favorites are his realization of how strong he has become. That whole sequence where he's doing, the push-ups in the chair and then the swinging around the bar. Even then, I was like going, I don't know if Jeff Goldblum's doing that, but there's a human being doing that, and that's pretty freaking cool. I love the insect politics speech. Yeah. I used to be able to just recite that word for word. It's such a powerful piece of dialogue. I love the scene when he's crawling up on the ceiling and he goes, "What's this? I don't know." There's a real dark humor about it that just, again, on multiple viewings, it has become an old friend. And so I laugh with it as opposed to being disgusted by it more so these days.
That means a lot when you get older.
What's that? I don't know. Just keep on going. Speaking of keeping on going, this story did, in fact, keep on going with The Fly 2, 1989, directed by Chris Walas, who was fresh off of his Oscar win. This was his first feature film effort. I know we have some staunch supporters of The Fly 2, but also there might be a few folks who have some thoughts that are not as staunch or as encouraging. So let us launch into The Fly 2. John, let's go ahead and kick things off with you.
Because I love The Fly so much, I was all in. I was waiting for it. Loved it in the theater. In fact, I did go see it with my wife. She did not appreciate the guy getting his head squashed in the elevator as much as I did. She might have been realizing some bad choices that she had made in her love life. But it's a monster movie. And if you look at it as a monster movie, it is amazing. Over the years, I will admit that there are more and more flaws that are more apparent now than they were when I first saw it. The sequence with the dog can be completely cut out because that is completely heart-wrenching for me to watch. I do agree, and as someone said earlier, as far as the difference between the lead cast, nowhere near in comparison as in the original. And that watching it, I watched it last night, and I think that dramatically hurts the film.
Literally, dramatically. I
Yes.
mean, John Getz can't even do John Getz this time.
I had really good memories of that film as a kid, completely shattered by my recent experience of watching it. Because as a kid, I remembered the monster. I mean, the monster is amazing, and it's probably one of the greatest monsters of the 80s. I don't know. And now, as an adult, watching it again, it was kind of a disappointing experience. One thing that I noticed was the complete lack of atmosphere. The first one has a powerful set in the laboratory, and this one, Bartok Industries, is just a white office, and it's kind of disappointing. So in many ways, I'm not a supporter now.
Well, it's funny because when we talked about the original Fly trilogy, the troubles I had with Return of the Fly show up here as well. I think they're trying to go bigger. It's almost like they lost track of what was the important element that made the original so successful. It was the human connections. It wasn't about the effects. If this movie, The Fly 2, were called anything other than The Fly 2, it would actually be a much better movie. I think the ideas that are explored are interesting, if not feasible. But that's one of the things that I found was that I want this to not be a sequel to Cronenberg's film. I want this to be a fun monster movie heading into the 90s with, big rubber monsters and effects. But it is carrying the legacy, and therefore I think it can't help but kind of be hamstrung by it.
This is another one I saw as a kid, somewhere on network TV in the 90s. I didn't mind it too much as a kid. I really love the really goopy bits, of course. I love the head crushing scene. I love the vomit drop right to the face, and I honestly think that effect is better than the head crush. That is an amazing scene, and I believe it was either the head crushing scene or that scene that was done by Chris Walas's brother. Like many people, you guys have said it, it really was missing that lead performance. I don't mind Eric Stoltz, but I started seeing reasons why he wasn't, Marty McFly. He just doesn't fit for what that movie's going for. He's very straight-laced and straightforward. He doesn't really take the role into his own. No problem with Daphne Zuniga. I thought she was fine. I thought she was a pretty decent. I like how they started out as just friends because he was alone and wanted some company, and she was just working the night shift and just there. So I did like that, but the whole thing with Bartok Industries, I think it just, like you said, Aaron, I think it got way too convoluted, and it didn't keep it simple, and it didn't build upon the simple story that was in the first film. And it's just giving us more. It's giving us, it's like you can almost hear the studio executives in the background being like, no, more gore, more this, more that. And it really doesn't serve as well as the story. But even now, I still find it entertaining. I still find it as a hokey B movie, monster movie. And in that aspect, I think it's completely fine.
If The Fly 2 has a lone defender, I am one. If The Fly 2 has no defenders, I am dead. I love this movie. I think it's fantastic. I appreciate the complaint, the original. But I mean, you wouldn't compare a great cheeseburger to a great slab of steak that was used to make it. They're different things, and that's fine. It's a very original movie. I don't give the same grace to something like Marvel movies because they go by a formula. And while there's bits of formula here, this goes for broke on the weird. It wants to be its own thing. It's stupid in the best ways, but the ways it's stupid are actually pretty smart. I love this movie. It's fucking awesome. It's like a comfort movie at this point. Like I just have a good time. They're on the fly too. It's great.
It's funny because before I saw this movie, I remember my dad telling me just about the dog scene. He didn't say like what happened. He's like, "Oh my God, there's this dog creature in the fly too, and it's so depressing, right?" I think I caught it in college. It's funny because the first dog scene happens where it's like is mutated and attacks the guy or whatever, and I'm like, "Oh, that wasn't that bad. I mean, it's sad, but not that bad." And then some time goes by, and I'm like, "Oh Jesus." It just does make you feel like I admire the effects work. I admire how powerful emotionally it is, but man, it does make you feel like shit. Like it makes you feel like you did something wrong after watching it. Even though you didn't. Yeah, and I agree with everything that's being said. I think if you look at it, not just as a monster movie, it's like a monster revenge movie, right? Like, okay, we're just going to give comeuppance to these horrible scientists. It works really well. The effects are great. I don't even mind it being a sequel to The Fly. My big thing is that I feel like they do Geena Davis dirty in it. I'm sure she didn't want to come back for it anyway, right? But like just killing her, it's that kind of, it's not quite this drastic, but it feels a little like killing Newt and Hicks in Alien 3, right? Like, oh man, you went through all this. You did the right thing. You fought through this to get to the other end of this nightmare in the last movie. Then you just die all of a sudden, right? And like very conveniently, almost pretty much off camera die. So that's my only gripe with it. Although this one arguably, I don't know, I was gonna say, does it have a happier ending than the first one? Sort of. Although the Bartok creature's like still alive, right? Like, which is feels cruel. I mean he's horrible, so maybe it's fine. But like, yeah, right.
It's kind of like a Freaks moment, right? You get the 32 Freaks where you get the chicken lady at the end.
Yeah, and so it's weird because it's like it is a more miserable movie, I guess, but it does arguably end a little more optimistically considering what happens to Geena Davis. So yeah, I like it. I mean, am I gonna say it's on the level of the original? No, of course not. But I do think it does. It does what it sets out to do very well. I haven't really looked into if its reputation has improved over the years, like in the horror community. Like, has it gotten its like second assessment yet at this point?
I think there are people who, like Eli, enjoy it for what it is. You know, they enjoy it for what it is. I don't think anybody thinks this is a good movie at this point. We have Mick. You don't think it's a good movie. You think it's an awesome movie, and there's a difference.
Yeah. I think it's good. Like it's like a 3-star, 3.5. You know, for me, I guess out of 5.
We have 4 screenwriters to thank for this, and I think that may also be the problem. Is that we have a story by Mick Garris, who also had the original screenplay. Then we had Jim and Ken Wheat come in and do a polish on it. And then we had Frank Darabont come on board, and he's the one who added the dog. And I'm like, that is no surprise there, Mr. Kick You Below the Belt, Frank Darabont. Hello, The Mist, anyone?
Yeah, as say guy who changed The Mist ending. We just did an episode on that in the Losers Club. I mean, those are all writers I like a lot too.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing. Like, we're not getting a consistent vision. It also feels like we have a little bit of amnesia from the first movie. You know, the telepods were about transportation, and here it's like, no, we've got all these medical breakthroughs. I'm like, when were we ever talking about this being a medical breakthrough? Also, the fact that Seth's notes have disappeared somehow, like we don't know what he was working on. It's very weird and schizophrenic in that regard, just in terms of being a sequel. If you're going to bring this knowledge forward, at least be consistent with that knowledge. And again, Eli, I also appreciate it for the goofiness that it is. I just wish that it was that much smarter, because the dumb hurts my feelings.
As a standalone movie, as you were saying, if this was called something else, I think a lot of people would remember it more fondly. But for me, when I watch a movie, I buy the ticket, I go on the ride, I try to focus on that. And while this immediately does the Alien 3 thing, I think Dan was saying, where it's really offensive and the immediate moment, that's like 30 seconds. And then it does a very good job of establishing Martin as this innocent character. There's that great moment where like these like lab scientists who didn't want to be parents are essentially forced to be shitty parents. And she's like giving him the injection. He says something like, oh, it's normal behavior. I read it in a book on motherhood. That is such a good, I think that's just good. I think that's actually good. maybe I'm cheesy. That's fine. I have weird taste sometimes, but I think that's actually good. I think the dog moment is good. It's sad. It hurts. It's supposed to hurt you. Media is supposed to hurt. It's how you buy in. I like that it hurts. I don't like cruelty to animals at all. I am a vegan. Like I get that, but it's not a real dog. And like I feel bad for him in that moment, and it does sort of justify his tirade, because if you just make it like, oh, he's the Fly, then you can kind of feel bad for those dudes. Those dudes fucked with a dog, which means at the end when the Fly comes out and he pets the dog and then he fucking murders those people. Sorry, I'm cussing too much. He murders those security guards and corporate stooges wholesale. It's just you watch the whole thing going, yeah.
Would cartoony be too
Oh, it's a total superhero movie, man.
yeah,
like,
I mean,
it
it
is
feels
not,
cartoony to me.
you could see a version of The Fly too, where they like tried to take it serious, and it would be doomed. It would be doomed to fail. You would never live up to the original. There's no reason to do it. Although I think it would be really cool. I was thinking if they would have gone like, oh, the other Fly in the telepod and just done the reverse Fly. I think that would be a cool movie. I'd watch. You watch this Fly become more man-like and sentient and react in horror at what it is. I think that would be kind of cool. But
and all his little Fly friends are looking at him weird.
Right. But you could do this movie where you try to be dead serious and it would just feel like you were doing the same thing over again. So instead we get like this metaphor for puberty, coming of age movie. It's clearly made for kids. And this is a family movie, right? I'd show this to my kid. Like, why not? Fuck it. Like, this movie's cool. So I don't know. Like, I think I like that it goes for broke and it doesn't go for the expected version. And it's just some monster guys going, we got a blank check to do some monsters for this doomed to VHS sequel. Let's make some cool ass monsters. And they go for it. A guy's face gets melted with like acid, and then he lays there moaning, and it's like better than the Indiana Jones face melt scene to anyone who hasn't seen this movie. John mentioned the elevator smashing. Like, it's just cool. Like, it's a cool movie. Check it out.
It like did reasonably well, right? I think at the box office, like it made twice its budget back at least, right?
Yeah, it did.
I'm as old as this movie. I have no idea.
I said I will not defend it, but I will say that Marin had a better deal than his father, because if we go by the idea of the deceased one, he has a person who cares for him. I mean, I'm not dissing the Geena Davis character, but here Marin has someone who tries to help him and tries to unease with him through the whole process, and she doesn't abandon him. So at least he had a better deal than his father.
Any other favorite moments people want to cite from this one?
One part that is not gory, but not scared me, but I thought it was very effective, is when the other scientist, the one with the tie that the creature gets a hold of, and then he's dragging him around. So he's already dead. But when that security guard opens the door and all you see is his body come flying, I mean, it's somewhat cartoonish, but I think it kind of shows the power, the strength that this thing has, that it literally just throws this body like it's a little stuffed doll. And it's a quick shot, but I always thought that was pretty cool. And yeah, the corpse with the melted face, and you see his breath coming out and his chest moving. So yeah, kind of sucks to have your face melted off, but you're still alive. And that is a throwaway sequence because there's guards and stuff running around, and if you're not paying attention, you don't notice that poor bastard is still breathing. And that makes it even worse. It's a good old-fashioned monster movie. You cannot compare it to the original. And there are still parts that I do like, but I've just in later years found other parts that bother me more. I would still recommend it for what it is.
I like the scene after Daphne and Zuniga and Martin, when after they sleep together, the security guard shows Daphne and Zuniga the tape of them having sex, and Martin just going berserk and tearing apart the apartment, because it's that moment you find out he's been lied to this entire time, and that's really the catalyst that kind of just sparks everything off. And it's not excusing the dog scene, but I think this is the next one where you're just like, oh god, that's so unfair, because I think we can all relate to like when we first moved away from our parents and got our first place, and it's like, oh, you're free from your parents, you can do whatever you want to. But then, maybe at like 9 o'clock at night, some weekday, you get a knock on the door. It's like, hi, honey, just wanted to check in, see how you were doing. Oh God, what is that girl doing here? That sort of thing, and it just kills that trust. And it was. I completely understand. I'd be tearing my apartment too if, like, my parents had a hidden camera up in there so they can monitor me or whatever.
I feel like the dog scene and the bar talk, and just the bar talk monster eclipses like everything. I'm just gonna say the dog scene. It's weird saying that's a favorite scene because it's pretty punishing, but like, I don't know. I feel like when you bring up The Fly too, if someone's heard of it, that's what they've heard of, and for good reason too. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a more human moment in the film, but it's like
they're hard to come by.
Yeah, nasty kind of thing. So gotta stick with the dog. Once I finally saw it after hearing so much about it too, it did live up to those expectations.
Cool. Let's circle back around, offer our final thoughts on The Fly 1986, celebrating its 40th anniversary. Let's kick things off with John.
One of the greatest horror films ever made. Plain and simple. Should have won an Oscar. And I don't think it's one like The Thing that the effects have not been dated over the last 40 years. They still hold up. If you want to see one of the best performances in a movie, period, let alone a horror movie, that's the one.
Dan.
What I love about this is that I haven't seen all of Cronenberg's movies, probably about half of them, right? But what I love about The Fly is that I think it can be enjoyed just as a straightforward horror movie. It can also be enjoyed as something a little bit more philosophical and scientific that meditates on some greater themes. It can be enjoyed as both those things, right? And that's a really hard trick to pull off. I love The Thing. Like, The Thing is like a top 5 horror movie for me. And I'm not saying The Thing doesn't have thematic weight behind it, but I think the barrage of effects are so constant in that movie, right? It's just like this roller coaster. It's this visceral thing. The Fly gives you time to really stop and think about what's going on. And it's a smaller cast too. So you're just getting to know the protagonist and the secondary protagonist a lot more. Yeah. So it feels like this very unique kind of film because it goes down so easy. Even the fact that we're saying it's very watchable and goes down easy, and it's this horribly violent, disgusting movie, really speaks to what Cronenberg was doing too. It's hard to think of many films that can do all of that at once. And yeah, I agree. One of the greatest ever made for sure.
Eli.
I'm a sucker for sympathy for the monster, and this does it best. Absolutely. It's gooey, it's disgusting, it's heartbreaking, it's funny. We've all talked about layers to it, so that's, I think, what I wanted to mention. There was one other thing I was going to say about it. We talked about the whole movie, and no one mentioned baboons, which is such a weird choice for a model organism because they're really expensive. Why wouldn't you just get some stray alley cats? Baboon is a crazy choice for a model organism.
Didn't Mel Brooks, isn't that part why they used a dog in the second movie? Because the baboon caused like a bunch of problems on set. Like, it was hard to.
Oh, really?
Rein in. I had no idea. That's what I heard. Yeah.
I think the dog in the second movie makes more sense because it's a childhood story. And, when you're a kid, it's common, we've all seen Old Yeller. But or maybe we haven't. I don't know. I guess last thought I'd throw in is I don't know if you guys knew this about flies, but they will accidentally pull their own heads off and try to eat them.
Accidentally?
Yeah. Like cleaning themselves, they can accidentally pull their own head off, and then they're like, what is this thing in my hand? I'm going to eat it. And they can't because
the mouth is still attached to the head.
Yeah. Yeah. You can look up videos of it. It's crazy.
Jay Luis.
Oh, well, it certainly is one of the greatest horror films of all time. I love how multi-layered it is. The way that you can just watch it as a horror film, as a monster movie, but also a great romance, philosophical film. It has everything. So to me, it is one of the greatest films of all time. I have no more words.
Well, Jay Luis actually does have more words, so please pick up your volume of Horror 101, the A-list of horror films and monster movies. Read his essay on those two films. Chris, bring us home.
I want to go back and kind of correct what I said earlier about perfect films. And one I left out, I don't know why, was The Thing. So, Alien, The Thing, and The Fly. Those I would consider to just be some of the masterpieces of horror. And they are my top 3 favorite horror films, top 10 greatest films in general. I see something new every time I watch it. I get another metaphor. I get another piece of symbolism about it every time I watch it. And, kind of what I thought about Aliens and The Thing, it's those movies that I feel are timeless. where you can pick it back up. You can watch it at any time. You can watch it when you're 10 years old. You can watch it when you're 65 years old. And you can not only get the same enjoyment, but you can also learn a little bit more each and every time. And I think it's those type of movies, and The Fly absolutely lands into that as just being a timeless classic.
Yeah, I will say I've seen this movie so many times that I think there isn't anything I'm going to get new from it. And oftentimes I am surprised there is something new that shines out for me. But I also think of it as, Stairway to Heaven. You hear that song and you are once again just kind of bowled over by how amazing it is. The build, all of the orchestration, and just the emotional power of it. I feel like the same thing is true with The Fly. I'm more surprised by how effective it remains after seeing it maybe 20, 30 times, that I can still be like, wow, when the Brundle fly takes the shotgun and places it to the head, where you're just like, ouch, and you see that pain in Geena Davis's face, that this is the only way out. The only way this can end is for me to do this. And she doesn't want to, and she does. I'm so thankful that this film exists. I'm so thankful that we had the opportunity to chat about it. I wish The Fly another 40 years, and looking forward to having you all on again very soon to chat about something else. And until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.